In this video, I'll be showing you all about one of the newest junglers of the block to come back out in the meta, being Volibear. With some fantastic buffs to his quality of life in recent patches, Volley has made his debut back into the meta as a strong frontline jungler and can easily contest with some of the strongest junglers in the game right now. Here's a quick breakdown of how we'll be going over the video. I'll touch on general concepts of Volibear's purpose as a champion and what success looks like in games that you are doing well on him. We'll then discuss different components of his kit and how we can work better to optimize each one of these. This includes going over different jungle matchups, runes, ability maxing, your build, pathing, how to play out ganks, and how to play out each phase of the game. But if you haven't yet, please sub for more content like this. It's free and you can always unsub if you want as well. And only 4% of you guys in my audience are currently subbed, so I'd like to get that number up together. On to the video. So ever since his rework, Volibear has been a champion whose kit was designed to always have the potential to break into the metagame. While in recent times he may have seen a lot more success as a top laner, they've improved his clear speed in the jungle significantly, and he's surprisingly still got a great upside for ganking, objective control, and of course excellent team fighting. Kicking off with your rune choices, there's actually a couple decent options going around, which are based generally on the matchup you're going for, as well as the playstyle that you have. Both Predator and Press the Attack are common keystones for Volibear, and both can very well be used in different situations. PTA specializes in strong dueling potential, which gives it a naturally strong use case in solo queue. Predator, on the other hand, essentially guarantees a strong engage tool for Volley and allows him to consistently start fights when he needs to. Predator is also useful against teams that generally have high mobility targets or really pesky backline targets that need to be rid of immediately. If you want my recommendation, I'd use Press the Attack for solo queue and Predator in more coordinated team play. With the PTA page, you want to finish off your primary precision tree with Triumph, Legend Alacrity, or Tenacity, depending on whether the enemy comp has a lot of CC, and Last Stand for amazing fighting power as a frontliner. With the Predator page, I'd recommend filling the rest of your primary tree with Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, and either Relentless Hunter or an Ingenious Hunter, depending on what you prefer. Regardless of what your primary tree is, I'd highly recommend taking Sorcery as your secondary tree in order to access Water Walking and Celerity. Movement speed is the biggest factor holding back Volibear from reaching the enemy frontline, so it's really good to be able to make up for that weakness. For rune stats, Volibear will take the relatively standard attack speed, adaptive force, and armor set for most matchups, switching the armor rune for scaling HP into heavy magic damage comps. Moving on to his matchups, Volibear fortunately has the luxury of being able to stat check most junglers in the game unless their name is Olaf. When he was a top laner, he was known for having an unstoppable early game and the ability to win extended trades thanks to his insanely overloaded passive, so that early game strength will carry over to his jungle prowess. This also makes him a great champion for many early game skirmishes because of this damage paired with the point and click stun provided in his kit. This means that if you want to, you really can aggress and fight the enemy jungler if he's trying to contest something, or if you want to try to create early advantages for yourself. With this in mind, I wouldn't worry about matchups too much on Volibear since he can basically excel against every champ in the game right now. Alright, so now onto build. When I came up with the item section for this guide, I was a little bit conflicted. The current main build revolves around abusing that L9 turbo boost chem tank build that essentially all the good junglers are running right now, but there's also this incredible AP build that I've been doing to terrorize solo queue, so I'll just touch on both and why you could actually opt for either of them. There's really good perks to both as well, so it gives Volibear the ability to be tank when he needs it and build damage when he wants it. It's a fantastic dichotomy. Starting with the chem tank build, this is a fairly standard build on most junglers these days. Turbo Chem Tank is the main mythic of choice here, of course for its consistent ability to engage onto enemies with incredible amounts of movement speed, along with having HP and resistances, which are all stats that the Volley would love to have in his kit since he personally gains damage from HP as well. The build revolves around getting Chem Tank and just building in every movement speed item in the game in order to make yourself unstoppable. So items like Dead Man's Plate and Force of Nature become really core, and you kind of just fill the gap with the rest of your items with whatever you need. I'd like to note that no matter which build you end up doing, you should always rush Lucidity boots on your first back because of how much they bring to the table for junglers right now. The amount of speed, clear speed, and cooldown reduction that it provides makes it unrivaled in value right now, and is actually just a must purchase for every jungler in the game. So on to this next build, which is more of a dark technology build more than anything else, but is surprisingly lethal, especially in a solo queue kind of environment. While Volley serves traditionally great as a tank and scales well with those beefy items, what I found really interesting and really fun were his AP scalings. This AP DPS Volibear build that I have definitely shapes his identity a little bit differently, and it makes him somewhat squishier against certain team comps, but rest assured that the amount of damage it deals and the amount of fun you have playing this version of Volley makes it so worth it. You're also still tanky enough to be be fairly relevant in fights. The mythic in this case is actually Hextech Rocket Belt, which is really strong for Volibear, especially when compared to its Turbo Chemtank counterpart. Rocket Belt actually gives the same amount of HP as Chemtank at 350, but exchanges the 25 armor and MR for a straight 90 ability power. Rocket Belt also has its active dash rather than the speed boost that Chemtank would normally provide. For Volibear, however, these items actually achieve a lot of the same thing, and you'd be surprised just how much more damage you can put out. Just for reference, Volley has some insane AP scalings, by the way. He gains up to 20% attack speed per 100 AP that he gets, can deal 40% of AP per auto attack when his passive is stacked, and has an 80% scaling on his Sky Splitter. So he can still be even an insane backline assassin because Stormbringer, his ultimate is a guaranteed engage with a 125% AP scaling and does physical damage. So in addition to outputting a ton of damage, it's actually really hard to even itemize against AP Volibear since it does both magic and physical damage. Depending on how your early game is doing, I really like picking up Dark Seal on Volibear just to how strong his AP scalings are. Dark Seal in general is extremely gold efficient, especially when you get some stacks rolling, so it's naturally a great buy for Volley. He also gains damage both off the AP and the HP that Dark Seal provides, since he has HP damage scalings too. If you're hard smurfing and you're nearing the 10 stack endgame fantasy, also consider upgrading it into Medjai's. Since Volley is also a tank as much as he is an AP bruiser, it'll be hard for teams to take the stacks off of him. On to the rest of the AP items. The holy trinity for AP Volley's items are Nashor's and Zhonya's, which provide a great balance of good DPS and survivability to survive enemy backlines. Nashor's provides a huge spike in DPS, but if you don't think you'll live long enough in skirmishes, then you'll have to sidetrack for at least a stopwatch if you value your life. To round off the build, I like to opt for Abaddons, and paired with the Medjai's, that's usually my full build. If you end up having 0 stacks in the end or didn't buy Medjai's, you'll have an extra slot for another item, which can usually be populated by something like Lichbane. I'd say for Volley that both of his builds are actually pretty useful and fun to run in different ways, and I would recommend experimenting with both of them in order to get a better feel for which one you like more. I personally have seen more success out of myself with the AP build, so you'll find me with that one more often. In terms of Volibear's combos, I think he's one of the junglers right now that he's pretty like ooga booga and can just run at you without worrying too much about having to be a mechanical god. There are, however, some minor optimizations you want to keep in mind when you engage so that you can maximize his effectiveness. For one, both his Q and W are kind of auto attack resets, so depending on the situation, you should try to weave both of them in between your attacks to maximize DPS. If you're, for example, charging into the enemy with your Q, you can hit the Q auto, then auto attack again, and then finish with W to get a really fast way of proccing press the attack, which should allow you to win most early game fights by itself. Volibear's Thundering Smash can also basically not get interrupted, because if he gets hard CC'd while he's running at an enemy with it, the cooldown on it is reset, so he's able to continue the chase. In addition to that, Volibear can extend the effective range of his Q when combined with his ultimate. This is such an intuitive combo that half the time you play Volibear, you end up doing this without even realizing it, but it's very helpful to be conscious of this interaction. When Volibear uses Stormbringer, the duration on his Q is actually paused while he's charging in. This means you can use the movement speed boost to start a gap close and then use your ultimate to finish the job and lock him down with the stun. A key to any strong jungler in Season 11 right now is the ability to keep up in tempo and farm as many camps as possible in order to maintain a strong gold and XP advantage. Volibear is definitely no exception to this rule now that Riot added some nice buffs to his W and E in the jungle, increasing his early game sustain and clear speed. While he isn't going to be as fast as champions like Hecarim, Lilia, or Olaf on his very first clear, his clear speed quickly ramps up, especially as he gets items, and it's not something to be taken lightly. He can still even finish a 6 camp clear in time for either crab that he wants as well. And because he's able to, you should make the 6 camp clear your priority every game on either side. On blue side, that's going to be blue, Gromp, Wolves into Raptors, red, Krugs, and Crab. And on red side, you reverse this. So that's going to be red, Krugs, Raptors into Wolves, blue, Gromp, and then whatever Crab. The timing's relatively tight on this though, so if you find that you're not practiced enough on the clears, you might see yourself only able to do 5 camps. Volley is also really strong as a level 3 ganker though, so you can consider a 3 camp clear into a mid gank or something, just because the awkward timing makes the gank that much more unexpected and likely to succeed. But in general though, the same goes for Volley as it does for most junglers, where it focuses heavily on high camp clears and taking ganks that you know are going to have a high impact on the game and a high chance of success. Volibear's ganks and ability to enable other players to win early game fights help him establish strong early game leads no matter the situation. Thankfully, I'd say they're not that hard to figure out either. When ganking on Volley, start off your gank by preemptively using your E on an area where you think the enemy will go once it procs. I treat this the same way as you would treat an Echo W when he ganks. After that, make your charge and press Q once you're able to connect with the stun, just maul that guy with your W and auto attack him until he falls to the ground, using your ultimate to follow blow up on them if they try to dash or flash away. If you start a gank directly behind an enemy, you can even save your Q for the dash and just use that as the gap closer instead. In addition to standard ganks, one thing to keep in mind is Volley's incredible strength as a tower diver with his ultimate. Since it disables tower auto attacks for at least 3 seconds at rank 1, you can have much more time than normal to get your gank off. With this in mind, look for opportunities where an enemy laner is either low, or if one of your laners has stacked a big wave that's about to crash into the enemy tower. Being able to get a kill with a dive and prevent that gold XP from going to that laner will be absolutely disgusting and a game influencing play at that point. Alright, so let's move on to the mid to late game. The same sort of idea continues when you move onto the team fighting stage, except that instead of diving maybe 1 to 2 people, you'll be going after the backline through potentially the entire enemy team. With AP Volley, you can use your Zhonya's and E in the enemy team to buy yourself more time and survivability, and use your W to increase your sustain and draw pressure in fights. As a tank Volley, you won't deal as much damage, nor will you be able to DPS the enemy that easily, but your sustain is stronger in these situations, so it's more about just soaking as much damage as possible so that you can buy time for your team. Either way though, Volibear's team fighting is all about getting on priority targets like the enemy AD carry or mid laner, deleting them from the game, and abusing his insane sustain to win out the fight. Volibear's overall playstyle perfectly matches what an ideal jungler in the current metagame is looking for. Insane engage potential, strong early game, great clear speed, and high influence on the map. Unlike some of the other tanks in the game though, he possesses insane capability through his really high ratios, meaning that if the situation calls for it, he can take the game into his own hands and put his team on his back. He's dominated the meta before, and he's back again to show the league what the bear is capable of. Hope this guide finds you well, and I will see you in the next one. Stay fresh.